Welcome back to What's the Next Step with me, Sarah Harper. I'm here each week talking with interesting people as they share their experiences in life and work that have led them to being who they are and doing what they do today. So I look forward to you joining us. Please subscribe, it makes a huge difference. And please get in touch. I'm on YouTube if you'd like to watch entire episodes, they are on there. I'm on Instagram, and you can get me on What's the Next Step podcast at gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Today we're joined by Adam Cox. We recorded this back in July of 2024, and he's a man of many things that you'll come on to hear, but primarily we talk about a couple of main topics. One is gut health, and one is really a groundbreaking new method of treatment for people in pain or who have bad posture or who need to increase their flexibility. And that technique is called neuro reset technique. Adam runs his own business called Movement Lifestyle, and he's absolutely passionate about helping people with, frankly, moving better in all ways. And he does that through resetting the nervous system. It's a groundbreaking new technique, and I really encourage everybody to listen and get on board with it, because it's going to be so helpful for so many people. And I promise you that, fast forward a number of years, this will be the way that people are treated for any aches and pains or difficulties they have with movement and flexibility, etc. So I really encourage you to listen. I'd love to hear what you think. So I'll see you on the other side, and let me know. Hello, Adam.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So we've been working together for about 3 years now, haven't we?
Yeah.
And I first met you in your kind of role as personal trainer.
Yeah.
And you've been working with me on that basis since then. But in addition to that, you have also been my nutritionist, my life coach, and my neuro reset technique expert. And a lot of that we'll come on to talk about today. But thank you very much in advance for all of those things that you have done for me. Because welcome. I would say that compared to 3 years ago, I'm in quite a different position than I was physically and mentally, probably. And I put a lot of that down to you. So thank you, Adam.
Brilliant.
And I suppose specifically, let's first of all talk about gut health, because that's one of the main areas that I would say that you have helped me. And I know it's a real passion area of yours, partly because of your own journey with some difficulties in your kind of gut health area, but also because I think you believe so strongly in the importance and significance of it. So when we first met, quite soon after we met, I was diagnosed with MS. And as a result of that, I take immunosuppressants, and to sort of counteract the fact that I'm immunocompromised, I then have to do what I can to boost my immune system naturally, which you have helped me with a lot. And a lot of that has been about diet. Second thing that you diagnosed well before any medical doctor did was that I had SIBO, and goodness knows how long I've had SIBO for. It was SIBO is small intestine bacteria overgrowth, for any listeners who haven't had the pleasure of being diagnosed with SIBO yet. It can cause quite a lot of quite uncomfortable symptoms. And actually, I was to a large extent quite asymptomatic, which is probably why I never really kind of raised my hand about it. But you somehow spotted it a mile away and helped me with that, also largely through diet. And on top of that, I also have had, since I was about 15, quite bad gastric reflux and indigestion. And it was relatively recent news to me that actually the prescribed medication that I was on, omeprazole, for anybody out there who is on omeprazole or lansoprazole, very similar, they're actually not the type of medication that you should be on long term. It's actually quite bad for your bone density, which particularly as a woman going into a certain age, really bad for you. So all of those things were going on for me, and I'm in a very different place now. And a lot of it, I think your main focus area was that we needed to address my gut health. So perhaps you could share a bit about what is so important to everybody, even if you don't have any of those three things that I've just lifted off. Why is it so important that we look after our gut health?
Well, I mean, we've spoken about this, obviously one-to-one, but they used to say that the gut was the second brain, but actually, there's research showing now that it should actually be considered the first brain, because there are 10 neurons in the gut for every one in the brain. So that gives you some indication of how important the information is coming from the gut back to the brain. And therefore, what an influence it has over the rest of your well-being, mood, energy, etc. I think that hopefully gives you some indication of how important the system is and the way that it's set up.
Yes, absolutely. And what I suppose a number of people aren't yet sold on is that they, as an individual, might need to turn their attention to their gut health. I think a number of people out there might still think that, they themselves are perfectly well, so perhaps this isn't for me. I don't need to really address this. I mean, what might people need to be looking out for that might indicate that there's some sort of problem somewhere that is worth looking into?
Yeah, I think. There are obviously, because I've just said of the amount of nerve endings in the gut relative to the brain, that shows you how many things and symptoms there could then be. I mean, it's virtually unending. Any symptom that you can care to mention probably has some roots in gut health. Skin conditions, energy. I mean, energy is a huge one for more than the obvious reason of, just energy in, energy out from what you're eating, but actually how you're digesting it. If you're not digesting well, then energy is going to become a problem. You're going to start to feel lethargic. Bowel movements, so quality of bowel movements, bloating, gas. Even things like the tone in the abdomen. You can see quite clearly. Let's say evening in comparison with the next morning, you can see if your abdomen is changing shape quite significantly in terms of the muscle tone, you're probably aggravating something during the day with what you're eating in your diet, and given 12 hours or however long it's been since you've last eaten, and that sort of settling, that's telling you that there's something there that's not quite right. And then there are more sort of perhaps obscure things for certain people, things like shoulder issues, back issues can all be related to the gut. Just a little quick one, the problems with the right shoulder can be coming from the liver, so the liver reflexes to the shoulder. So each organ that you've got, each internal organ has a reflex pathway. So you can see problems in different joints coming from different organs. So a lot of the digestive organs you can sort of start to map out against backs and shoulders and necks and things like that.
Yeah, interestingly, I had quite a difficult Christmas actually. We were in Dublin as a family, and I had a really painful left hip, to the point where I could barely walk, to be honest. And I was quite disturbed by it, because I didn't really understand what had happened. I hadn't fallen over, I hadn't done anything particularly dramatic, and I didn't really know where it was coming from. And it turns out that actually I had a lower small intestine issue rather than a hip issue. And probably what I had done has overindulged during the Christmas period, and my hip ended up hurting. And it was quite a stark kind of reminder to me, or it was a really clear example to me of how important it is to be careful about what you eat.
Yeah, and the holistic nature of the impacts of what you're eating.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a really important one to consider. I think when people go to practitioners for, let's say, back pain, it's viewed very mechanically. My back hurts, therefore it must be the muscles or the spine.
Right.
Or maybe, the discs or something. And it's just not true. It's not the case, You can clear back pain up sometimes very quickly just having nutritional intervention. It's
quite fascinating and possibly quite overwhelming for people who aren't as well read and educated as you are, for example, on the topic. I mean, if you were to give listeners, some advice, I suppose top 3 things that you think everybody could pay attention to, or could, the small steps that they could start to take in relation to looking after their gut health, what would those 3 things be?
It's a great question. I guess I could list so many that it would get boring. So maybe a better way of doing it is, what are the top 3 things that we've talked about? What would those 3 things be?
Yeah, okay. So I would say that for me, it was, first of all, I mean, we did quite a thorough, I think over a period of 2 weeks diary, didn't we, on my food intake, and the impact that was having on things like energy levels and bowel movements and things.
Yeah.
You took a look at that as, I think, a first step. And I think your absolutely clear first piece of advice was that I needed to eat way more protein. And so much that it was quite surprising. I mean, I still slightly struggle, if I'm honest, some days to really get enough protein in me. And I suppose the point of that is that it fills you up to the extent that you then don't need to eat some other things that perhaps your body doesn't need so much of.
Yeah.
So now, I'm eating much more protein than I ever did, and much more protein than I would say most of my friends are. So I think increasing protein, but for sure, almost all of us can do.
Yeah.
That's one of the takeaways I would say. Second takeaway is, because alongside seeing you, I was also, as you know, doing the Zoe program, which I'm sure a number of our listeners have done or are potentially going to do. One of the main takeaways for me from doing that was the need to diversify the gut microbiome. And the suggestion as the way to do that is to have 30 different fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, etc., in a week.
Yeah.
And I totted them up when I started doing the program, and I was averaging out at about 15. So, and I thought 15 was okay. And it's quite an effort to try and get to 30, to be honest. But I'm never very far away from a sunflower seed that I can chuck onto something, or a pine nut or something like that. And I do find that I'm not kind of scientifically religious about it, but if that isn't a contradiction in terms, but I'm really aware of just, not going for the same thing, the same vegetable that I went for yesterday. And actually, when I'm doing my shopping order or when I go to a supermarket, I do just try and just think a little bit more broadly about what I could eat and what I might enjoy eating. So that's the second. And the third, I would say, is finally, thank you to you once again, finding the right supplements. So I suppose that specifically would be in relation to my reflux, which anyone who suffers from reflux and indigestion, which I know you also used to suffer from, is very painful and quite difficult to manage. And I think that there are so many things out there that, I think lots of people try, but you have got me on course with the right kind of thing. And now I'm pleased to say that I don't take prescribed medication anymore, and I am most, like 9 days out of 10, I am reflux and indigestion free, which is quite remarkable given where I used to be, I would say.
Yeah, from 15 to 40 something, that's a long period of time, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the medication.
So those would be three things that I would say. What would you add to that or take away?
Yeah, I mean, they're all great things, absolutely. I would not take any of them away. I would add in typically slowing down for most people with the speed at which they're eating. So there's something called the cephalic phase of digestion, which is the sight, the smell, and just that appreciation of the plate in food in front of you. And that phase of digestion is really important because that starts the digestive processes, like the saliva in the mouth, and all the secretion of the digestive enzymes start to be released into the digestive tract. So we don't shut that down, but it certainly impedes that significantly when we are not sitting with our food and taking our time and chewing properly. If we're on the move, if we're shoving a sandwich in between meetings, those kind of things, you're just not giving your digestive system the best chance of extracting the nutrients in that food, and converting it into what we want, bone, skin, etc., energy. So slowing down, I would say, there's a Buddhist little quote that says we should chew our water and drink our food. So we should, when we take a mouthful of water, we should allow that to sit in the mouth for a few seconds before swallowing it and not glug it down. And we should chew sufficiently that we turn the food into properly liquid before we swallow it. That way, the rest of the system has a much easier time to digest and extract the nutrients from it. So I would say that's probably the key thing, sitting with other people and eating and enjoying food. That's kind of the key thing that I see most people could benefit from. As a client actually just got back from a clinic abroad, and one of the key things that they got her to do for, I think it was 2 weeks she was there, was they had very small plates. They were eating with really small cutlery. I think at one point she said she was eating literally with a teaspoon for something. And they were advised to put the knives and forks or the spoons down in between each mouthful, which I think is a great idea anyway. I do that. I'll try to do that. And she said it took forever to eat a meal.
Like eating with a toddler.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, she said, I think there was a minimum amount of time that they were supposed to, I don't think they were chained to the table or anything, but they were sort of told that 25 minutes is probably the minimum it should take you to eat that plate of food. I mean, most people are not sitting at a dinner table actually eating for that length of time. So yeah, that's what I would say would be a really great thing for most people to do, and it has many payoffs.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Thank you, Adam. Can we talk about neuro reset technique?
Yeah,
which is your other passion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And big part of your day-to-day job. But it's really new, isn't it? So I would say most of our listeners probably haven't ever heard of the neuro reset technique. And even when I try and explain it to friends and family and anybody who comes to me or mentions that they're in pain or have a difficulty in some part of their body, and I suggest that they go and get some neuro reset technique, I find it really hard to explain it in any detail. I've seen both you and your colleague Simon Frost, who I'm sure you'll come on to mention, because he's pretty fundamental to the whole movement, as it were. And I've seen both of you previously over the last sort of 3 to 5 years. And I first went to Simon because I had, frankly, quite a lot of aches and pains, which many people would have similar aches and pains. I had a sore SI joint. I had poor posture. I had, we don't need to have the laundry list, but it's fair to say that I just didn't feel like I was in particularly good shape from a kind of muscle perspective, and I was regularly in some form of pain, I would say.
Yeah.
And I went to see Simon first, and even today you have done some of this work on me, and I still struggle to really describe it to people, because it's essentially, it feels a little bit like you're a wizard and you suddenly fix something without me, the patient, really having to do anything at all. And I feel instantly different, i.e. better than before a session with you or with Simon. It's quite remarkable. Could you please explain what neuro reset technique is?
Well, I'll try and keep it as short as possible, because it's not easy. But essentially, it's a system of using the brain and the nervous system to optimize muscles and joints. And optimize meaning have optimal control over muscles and joints. And that sounds like, well, you think, well, my muscles and joints not optimally controlled. We can test those things really quickly on people and show them where they're lacking fundamental control and why that would cause the aches and pains that they've got. So, brain, nervous system, and optimizing that control of the muscles and joints so that you have better posture, freedom of movement, and optimal mobility as well. Hopefully that's fairly straightforward. Yes,
and I suppose one way I've heard you describe it before is that it's almost like sort of physiotherapy or osteopathy on steroids.
Yeah, directly using the nervous system. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I suppose from the patient perspective, many people have been to physios and osteos before, and while they may that experience over a period of time some relief in the pain or some improved movement in whatever it was that they were originally seeking some improvement on. Is it fair to say that that isn't sort of quote unquote fixed? Whereas with the work that you do actually fix something for a much longer period of time, possibly even for the rest of someone's life.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably upset some practitioners who are sort of saying that and making those claims. But I mean, the research is out there to show that even, corrective exercise, which I've done for 20 years, right. And any other practice for that matter, has what we call technical speak, but short-term potentiation, which just means that you are increasing the available information on one side of a neuron or a nerve cell, but not on the other side, not on the long-term side, which means that perfect example is, let's say we do a postural exercise. Yeah. So we measure your posture before, we do the postural exercise, we measure your posture afterwards, we see an improvement. If I come back in 2 days' time and you've done nothing in between, more than likely we are back to square one again. So that's short-term potentiation. Okay, long-term potentiation, which is where the neuro reset technique really is unique in its offering, is we make that postural assessment, we do our corrections, we see the improvement straight after, and I can come back in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, having done nothing in between, given you no homework, and still we're able to see that change. And yes, those changes will degrade over time, but it will be months and years, and that's only if you've not used that part of the body properly for that period of time. Everything degrades over time. Right. So, it's not, you can't just sit in in an armchair and not expect anything to degrade. But that's the big difference, is that long-term potentiation. And I know it's a fancy term, and I think
that's a helpful way to understand it. And you're right. I certainly am not meaning to. I mean, I've had plenty of physio and osteo over the time. It's just been, which has been helpful. But certainly, I would say that what you've just described seems to be taking it all really to the next level. Certainly, from a patient perspective, feeling as though that you actually have something which is going to fix you more than just sort of give you a period of time where it might feel a bit better. I mean, I think that some amazing examples of just in my social circle. One of my friends has suffered from terrible migraines for most of his life. And seen, many a specialist about migraines, and he spent some time with Simon and now no longer has any migraines. My mum, who's 75 now, was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when she was 25 and has suffered excruciating joint pain at various points over her life. Has tried the diets, has tried steroid injections, again, some of which have had some impact. She sees Simon now and said that for the first time in her life, she feels as though she has better movement, better mobility than she ever has. And that's quite an amazing statement. And of course, he can't cure rheumatoid arthritis, but he has been able to manipulate the nervous system, I suppose, around the joints so that it's better supported. And my mum is now in better physical condition than she's been for years and years and years. And I think that's quite remarkable. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, mobility is a really great way of measuring the efficiency of this, I think. Right. Because mobile range, which is what mobility means, right, is a function of, or is determined by, your nervous system's control. So if you go through a range of motion in, let's say, your shoulder joint, let's say you put your arm behind your back, right, your brain has a map of the shoulder joint and its efficient control of that joint. And if you go off that map, i.e. if you go too far behind your back, and your brain isn't able to control the joint at that point, the muscles on the front, the pecs, the shoulder muscles, biceps, will get tighter because the brain doesn't want you to go back there again,
because it can't control it. And where you go and you can't control, you have a much greater risk of injury. So let's keep you where we can control. So when we get these really tight postures occurring, it's the brain saying, hey, I want to keep you in this range of motion because that's where I can control you currently.
To protect you.
To protect you, protect you from injury. So when someone's really mobile, and I'm talking about mobile without having to stretch and do this every single day with the foam rollers and stretching straps and, attending yoga 7 times a week. When someone's mobile, that's really telling you there's a healthy nervous system.
Yes.
And vice versa. When someone's really tight and restricted, the nervous system's telling you something there.
Yeah, I see that. So I suppose the question really, though, is how do we get this out there to more people? Because Simon is really the founder of the Neuro Reset technique. Yeah. And he is...
And I must say, an absolutely phenomenal practitioner. I mean, to be able to put together what he's put together over, I think, 16 or 17 years and take, neuroscience, neuromuscular therapy, which is where his background is, sort of massage on steroids, if you like, and sort of functional training, and bring all that together is quite remarkable. What he's done.
I agree. I totally agree. And what I was sort of, I suppose, trying to lead on to is how do we get this out there to more people? Because Simon, A, is treating patients. Yeah. And B, is trying to train up a number of other people, including you, so that there are more than just Simon in the country who can do this for people. Yeah. But I think we're quite a way away from Bupa, for example, having this as part of a health insurance scheme. And for those who can afford health insurance, and anyway, for those who can't, not everybody is going to have the income to be able to spend on this. Yeah. And it feels as though in future this will become the norm in terms of how people are treated for aches and pains and postural mobility issues, etc. But for now, what can people do to try and access some of this, would you say? Yeah,
obviously go and see Simon, or come and knock on my door if you're living in London. But if not, there's going to be videos coming up on my YouTube channel that we're just starting to put together now to help with quite common aches and pains, the common knee, hip, back, shoulder things, that'll hopefully sort of walk people step by step through those things. So that's going to be a good resource to do at home, to at least get the baseline of mobility, posture and function upgraded. That should help. Okay, that's great. So people can do that. Then it's a sort of DIY version with your help on a YouTube video. Exactly, yeah. And on there's also a in the about section on the YouTube channel and on the website, there's a self-assessment that you can do to find out how well your nervous system's currently functioning. Okay, that sounds really helpful. Great. That sounds really helpful. Well done for doing that. Thank you. So what's next for you? I mean, you've got an awful lot going on. What is next? Yeah, so new website. Like I said, I've just finished the self-assessment. Okay. So that's a really useful tool. And more neuro reset training. Okay. I think from where I am currently, looking forwards, I see that being quite a long course of study and exploration, because there are so many avenues. It's not, we talked about muscles and joints, but those muscles and joints are impacted by the eyes, the inner ear, the digestive system. All of these things feeding into the nervous system can be treated using neuro reset techniques. So, there's a long way to go. Yes, absolutely. It must feel a bit never ending, which we're those of us who are benefiting from it are very grateful for your interest in it, that you keep going. I mean, it's a good point that you just reminded me of. A really important part of the neuro reset technique is it's not just about physical change, is it? It's absolutely also about mental well-being and helping people with
I mean, Simon's talked about phobias. He's talked about, traumas. I mean, there's just huge, to your point, a huge way to go with this. So I'm really excited. I'm very glad to have ever stumbled across you and Simon. Thank you for making such a difference to my life, and thank you in advance for the help that you're going to give to others.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. It's my, as you said earlier, it's my passion to do this. And I wake up every day excited to learn more.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
One thing I should clarify, listening back to that conversation with Adam, is that it sounds a little bit as though I am now one of these people that treat my body as a temple. And just to reassure you, I don't. I enjoy a glass of wine as much as the next person, but I certainly have tried to make changes, as you heard, where I can and where I think it's going to make the most difference. But interestingly, the point of change is what really stands out for me, because I'm sure many of you will listen to that and think, yes, but I've tried this diet and I've tried this bit of exercise and I've tried to set New Year's resolutions, but nothing sticks. And I mean, again, I've been there, absolutely. And I suppose it's really about how we get on board with the change, isn't it? And how we really want to make a difference. And I suppose the way that I've managed to do it this time, in case it's helpful, is that I tried to set really realistic goals. So I didn't say, on January 1, I'm going to lose this amount of weight by X, or I'm going to cut gluten out by Y, or whatever the goal is. I had very realistic goals, but was also quite flexible with them. So if I had a slip up, or if things weren't quite going according to plan, I didn't then just sort of throw the towel in and think, oh, well, it's not worth it. So I think the goal setting is really important. I think it's being realistic and being flexible with them. I also was very conscious of having a really constant reminder of why I was doing it. So I had a very clear motivation. I was diagnosed with MS. I needed to sort out my immune system. So it was very clear for me. But if it wasn't quite so clear cut, I think I would just try different ways of making sure I had some sort of daily reminder. Maybe it's something visual stuck on the fridge. Maybe it's something that you listen to first thing in the morning, whatever it is, but some way of keeping you kind of on track, I think, is helpful. But I think just be kind to yourself. Like, none of this stuff is easy, and change is really difficult. Particularly when we run really busy lives, it's very hard to kind of, not slip back into the old ways of doing things. So I totally respect that and totally get that. I've experienced that many a time. But I hope some of you get something from this, and I really hope that you find some benefit from some changes that you make. I will put Adam's website on the show notes, because you may want to get in touch with him directly. But thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.